So a friend visited me on New Year's Eve, and I spent time with them. They were not raised Christian, but in many ways, Christianity sort of seeps into the culture of the U.S. And we were talking about me going back to work and how I really do love Epiphany. And it blew their mind that every time they had set up or seen a nativity scene, that the wise men shouldn't necessarily have been there. So I was explaining how we have the Luke account, which is sort of classically the story that we tell on Christmas Eve. And then we have the Matthew account, which is the one that we take the story of the Magi from. And we have sort of smooshed them together into a braided story that takes two very different accounts of what happened and tries to make sense of them in one sort of a cohesive narrative, I'll say. And that is actually the image that we get when we set up a creche. Now, I love this creche. I was looking at it this morning as I came back into the space and the sanctuary. I love it because there are 4 wise people, and at least one of them appears to not be a man. And maybe 2. Don't know. There's facial hair involved. But I love that it's 4 and that it's mixed gender, because we say 3 wise men, and the reason we think 3 is because there were 3 gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And so we were just like, okay, 3 gifts, 3 people. This is how a party works. But genuinely, this was a traveling group of people from a different religious background, a different cultural background, who went on a pilgrimage. Now, that word pilgrimage, we might have some interesting thoughts about. So I'm curious, when I say the word pilgrimage, what does that mean to you? A journey. Yeah. What else? Sacred journey. Yeah. Yeah. Any other thoughts about the word pilgrimage? People going to the Hajj. Yeah, our Muslim siblings.
It's hard and it involves surrender.
It's hard and it involves surrender. Yeah. So before I was out on medical leave, I was here for like 2 weeks because prior to that I had been traveling. I have had the immense privilege to go to Ireland and parts of England twice in the last 2 years on essentially pilgrimage, a spiritual journey, a sacred journey. And I have a teacher who used to be based in Denver, but who is now based in Ireland, that I have studied with over this time. And she has pretty strict rules about what makes a pilgrimage a pilgrimage. And she's very clear that this is not tourism. You know, there are lots of Celtic sacred sites and Christian sacred sites in Ireland and in rural England. And the privilege to go see them is not something that you just cruise by. It is something that she invites us into a slow time, an unfolding, building a relationship with the place, a deep listening to the history of it, to the people who tend these sacred spaces that may not even be on any map. And interestingly, she doesn't let us take pictures. Because to take a picture is to take yourself out of the moment and to take something from the space. Instead, she invites us into a long unfolding, a spacious time that isn't just, I checked this off my list, but it is something that I sank into the holiness of this space. Some of these sites which have been holy even prior to the establishment of Christianity. And so I have some embodied knowledge of what it means to go on pilgrimage. I know the kind of yearning that comes up that sent me to Europe. that kind of deep need to know more about my own roots, my own spirituality, and to build a relationship with that land. There was something compelling about Ireland that asked me to go there, a long-standing desire that culminated in the last couple of years. And so, when I ask questions of this text, I ask, what was so compelling that the Magi traveled without knowing why? They saw an astrological event. They say they saw the star in the sky and felt that it heralded something big. And there was this deep yearning in them that said, I want to go be part of that. I want to go witness it. I want to go be in relationship with it. I want to surrender to not knowing and listen to other ways of knowing through intuition and dream. To travel sometimes by night, being lit only by this star, to put one foot in front of the other and allow the journey to unfold as it may. And they didn't know what was going to be waiting at the end of their journey, because they showed up at the palace and quickly realized, wait a second, this Herod guy isn't what we were looking for. So they had some preconceived notions about what their pilgrimage was going to be like, and had to allow those preconceived notions to be blown up. It's an interesting thing. At the beginning of the year, we think we know what the year is going to hold, and yet we don't. As it unfolds, it requires their surrender. And so they listened to a wisdom that came from another place, something so compelling that undermined that idea of worldly authority and royalty and rulership. And it took them to a humble home where there was a babe less than 2. I have had the distinct pleasure of being the auntie to a 4-year-old. So my family came to visit me because I wasn't able to travel. They came to visit me over the holiday season. So I got to hang out with my 4-year-old nephew. And I remember him when he was 2, and his personality was really starting to come out, like around 18 months and 2 years. And it's continued to develop. And so I imagine, these magi are looking for something, incredible and amazing, and what they find is an extremely precocious 2-year-old. And we don't really imagine Jesus as a toddler. I bet he was a holy terror. Can you imagine being Jesus' mom? Like, we talk about Mary in terms of the Christmas story, but we don't talk about her mothering super often. Like, I bet mothering, a divine child who, knew most things, but whose like developmental brain couldn't hold all of them at the same time, would have been an absolute nightmare. And so these 3 wise people from a far off place come and they find an 18-month-old, a 2-year-old, toddling around, curious, learning, and that's where the holiness is. One of the unexpected places God shows up. A lot of times we pick words like wonder and joy to be an intention for our year, and so when we find an 18-month-old God, what an incredible possibility for wonder and joy to learn those lessons deep in our bones, watching the children in our lives. And so it's an unexpected pilgrimage, right? Sometimes when we go to sacred sites, they are, large churches that are immaculate and beautiful and have been tended gloriously for a really long time. Other times, like in her poem, The Blue Iris, Mary Oliver talks about, sometimes it's just a pile of rocks. Sometimes it's a mess. Sometimes it's a 2-year-old's playroom. Sometimes it's toys strewn everywhere, and God still shows up. But there is an underside to being guided by intuition and dream. I wonder how many of us are familiar with that phrase, the dark night of the soul. Is that one we've heard before? Yeah, St. John of the Cross. Do you know the last half of it? So we've culturally taken that idea of the dark night of the soul, and we've actually cut off the last half of the phrase that comes from St. John of the Cross's writings. So we use it to talk about the worst things that we can go through, where we are living in doubt and fear and don't have anything to hang on to, where it feels like we're unmoored. But in the writings, the last half of the phrase is, bright flows the river of God. So we have this narrative of the dark night of the soul where we're completely unmoored, nothing to hang on to, tossing and turning, like wondering where God is. But in the actual context of the phrase, it is in those times of deep distress that God has the ability to show up and guide us, to be even more present than we could have imagined, to offer us sustenance when nothing else in our life is able to. And we see that alluded to in this text too. The Magi, Herod calls to them secretly to find out when they saw the star appear for the first time. The text tells us it's in secret that we have this nefarious intent, which later in the chapter we find out that he is going to use this knowledge to annihilate all of the children of that age if he cannot find Jesus himself. Echoing back to the story of Moses and the slaughter of the children in the Exodus story. But the Magi listen again to that intuition and dream. God shows up to guide them that says, do not go back to this man. Do not give him this information. Go home by another way. And guides us in a way that we could not have expected, especially in our distress. Sometimes in our distress, we keep banging against the same wall, hoping that it will change. But being in relationship with our own grief can shift something for us and allow intuition to change the outcome, change how we are held even in the midst of that feeling of unmooring. And I imagine Joseph too. Dreams show up for him as well that said, take the child and his mother and go away to Egypt. I imagine that was also a dark night of the soul. Joseph, who had a trade, Joseph, who had family in the area, Joseph, who had roots in this part of the country, being asked to pull up everything and run away because of impending danger. And yet it was the guidance of God through probably one of the most stressful times of his life that led him into safety, fleeing as a refugee over the border into Egypt. And so sometimes being guided by intuition and dream is this positive experience, the good vibes only. I want more joy in my life. I want more gladness in my life. I want more wonder. I want more magic. I want these things. And God does show up in those places. And also in times of our deep distress, in times of our grief, in times when we don't know where we're going, in times when we don't feel like we can take another step, there is guidance and relationship and a star to guide our way there too. And so we're entering this year, another chapter to write, another 12 months to experience, 52 weeks. Who knows what it will hold? We hope more joy. We hope more happiness. We hope more connection. And also, the fact of the matter is, living a human life means that that's not always the case. That there is grief here, too, grief that has struck our chosen family of faith quite closely on the very first day. And so, while we want wonder and magic, and those things will be present even in the midst of our grief, God will always be present, even in and especially in our distress, in the dark night of our soul. Right flows the river of God. And so, we're going to share our star words for the year. This is a practice I started 6 years ago now? 6 years ago now, when I was an intern here as a student. It comes to us from a group of women pastors called RevGal Blog Pals, and it has a long lineage and is practiced in lots and lots of different mainline Protestant churches. And so, to invite just a little bit of mysticism and mystery into our life, to give a little opening for the stream of God to flow through, I invite you to pick one at random. They're all face down. And allow this to guide as long as it feels right to. Maybe it guides your whole year. We do this ritual every year. Maybe it's just today, or this week, or this month. But I invite you not to root through and pick one for yourself. The year you want to have, the year you're going to force yourself to have by hook or by crook. But instead, allow just a gentle bit of mysticism and mystery into the picking of it, trusting that the star that you pull is the star for you. Now, you may have a strong reaction to the word that is on this star. It may indicate the kind of year you do not want to have. And yet, the meaning of the word may shift over time. Your relationship with it may shift over time. It may even be the anchor you need when you're feeling unmoored, even months from now. And so I invite you to just pick with a little bit of mystery and a little bit of wonder, and follow in the steps of the Magi just a few inches as we set out on our journey together. So it has also been our practice for the last couple of years that someone comes up and picks one on behalf of the church. So 2 years ago was Hope. And in sort of a very strange turn of events, we wound up partnering with an organization called Hope COS, Hope Colorado Springs, which has been an ongoing and really beautiful partnership since that happened. We didn't know what hope would mean to us as the year unfolded. This last year was prayer. And so there's been encouragement and opportunities to practice a prayer life through the course of our year last year, and will continue into this year. Prayer isn't bound to 1 year, turns out. But if someone would like to pick one of our star word as a church, I would invite you to come. Hope again. All right. Perfect. Thank you so much, Dave.
How many times did you put hope in there, Mallory?
No, genuinely, everyone is unique. There are no repeat words. So you will not have the same word as anyone else, and I'm hoping to overhear some agape meal conversations about what words we got. We'll see. So the star word hangs out right at the entrance on that bulletin board. There's the star word for the year is there and present, and this will be a theme that we will work with throughout the year. So we return to hope. Love it. Can everyone read my handwriting? Yes. Okay, good. A while. What's that? I did. I had time off to do my craft project, but it is something I do with prayer and intention, holding you all in prayer as I make them, and pray that whatever word you got is the word that you needed. So, so dear ones, we begin our pilgrimage through this year, a sacred journey which may be hard, may require, probably will require our surrender, but is a sacred journey in companionship with God, guided by a little paper star, and in relationship with each other. You can go on solo pilgrimages, but sometimes the most profound ones are the ones you travel together with someone else. And so we set out today, together, hand in hand with each other, traveling by the light of the star and guided by God. Amen.